Morning, gentlemen. I think we last saw you sometime late last year and so forth, and this is kind of an update or whatever is happening with hazmat issues. So who's in charge this year? Chief Hogue, good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having us. And I'd like to do some quick introductions. We had some changes to our hazmat exec board earlier this year.
I mean, smaller this way. Yeah.
And some of it was due to the passing of our good friend and colleague, Chief McKibben. So we had to make some rearrangements. But to give you some introductions, this is the executive board officers. I'm the chairman. Chief Rich is the vice chairman, and Tom is our financial officer and our treasurer. And we meet the last Tuesday of every month out at Tim's office at the EMA. And what we're here for today is just to give you an update on the hazmat team, our finances, and a strategic plan that we would like to put forward to you. The Stark County Hazmat team probably is the ¡1 fire service collaboration, cooperation of all the fire departments in Stark County, with Chief Guerra running the team, and it has worked. I'm proud of it. It's made up of a combination of firefighters from several departments, and it works well. We've got some concerns in the future. We'd like to express those to you, and Chief Burgasser has put all that together for us today. So,
Morning, Chief.
Morning, everybody. Commissioner, if you come near me with that, I'm out the door.
How are things in Massillon today?
Well, he was Employee of the Year. Chief was Employee of the Year for the City of Massillon.
Department Director of the Year.
Well deserved.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
And
it.
how much of a stipend did you come on with?
I think it's going to be the same as the Department Director of the Year last year. So that would be just recognition. I guess it looks good on a resume, but I'm not going anywhere. So. What we'd like to do is update you, and again, over at the hazmat meeting, they continue to elect me to speak to you. So if any of the three of you would like to not have that happen again, which would be okay with me, just pass it along to Chief Hogue, and then I won't have to come up with my 2 pages of prepared remarks. As the Commissioner indicated in August last year, we requested that you consider increasing our operating budget to $65,000 annually. And part of when we came to present to you was we had a strategic plan, and we wanted to have a sustainable effort, and we gave you 5 parts of that. What I'd like to do is update you on all of that, starting with our current fiscal situation. Again, because of your generosity, we operate with a $65,000 annual budget, and that was part 1 of our strategic plan. So we were successful in coming to you and asking you for more money, and you gave it to us. To date, we spent 12.5% of that budget, but there are outstanding bills to be paid for supplies, personnel, and fuel. And not reflected in that budget is about $15,000 of a contingency fund in the event of a major event. And we have $26,000 reserved for some sort of facility. And I'm going to get to that part of the strategic plan in a minute. Yes, $26,500, approximately. Again, part 1 of the strategic plan was to ask you to increase our operating expense, and we're grateful for the fact that you did. Part 2 of the strategic plan was to reduce expenses. And although we have very few means of reducing our expenses, we looked at 3 areas this year: physical exams, fuel, and coordination of services were where we started. And we went out, we requested bids from area medical facilities and we're going to be changing firms. It'll save us about $30 per exam. So at 20 to 30 exams annually at a savings of $30, we expect to save about 1% of the budget. Our fuel costs are variable, obviously, but our next task is going to be to see if we can get any savings there. And then finally, what we're going to try to do is coordinate services such as using the same vendor for air pack testing, pump testing, and maintenance, maybe coordinating those things at the same time to see if we can save a few dollars that way. Part 3 of the strategic plan was to ensure diligence and persistence in charging responsible parties for our responses. One of our concerns was last year we received $558 for the entire year from billing for responses. Part of that was due to the fact that we couldn't charge anyone. Part of that was due to the fact that in working with the prosecutor's office, we couldn't proceed to collections or do some of those things. We've ironed a few of those things out, and we've received so far this year $2,673.18 for payments from responses. Again, we're working hard with the EMA and the prosecutor's office to try and ensure that billing is completed and our payments are collected to the best of our abilities.
Who do you work with, by the way, the prosecutor's office? Any one particular lawyer?
Deb Dawson.
With them?
Whoever Tim says.
Yeah.
Able to collect anything from that day you were in here, was it after that warehouse?
Convoy,
Convoy, yeah.
we're still working on that. A lot of those are in process. Meth labs is a situation that we continue to deal with in terms of hazardous materials responses, and finding responsible parties for those is very difficult, obviously, as you guys can imagine. I'd like to pass out a packet. I'm going to talk about Part 4 and Part 5 of our strategic plan. So here's just some information with respect to Part 4 and Part 5. Part 4 of the strategic plan was to bring you an assessment of charging political subdivisions for services. What we did, and that's the first stapled packet, was to bring you a draft of a joint cover letter that explains the team and talks about the need for an assessment in order to continue to operate. What we'd like to do is propose having you, the commissioners, and us create a joint letter to send out as a communication to the subdivisions. And again, this is a rough draft that really reflects more of the sentiment of our collective words rather than a final document. And Commissioner Bernardy would say it needs polish, so it definitely does that. Along with that, the second 2 pages are 2 different assessment schedules. One schedule generates about $15,000, one generates about $30,000. We felt that the assessment should reflect and be based on the population of the communities, some of the location of EHS facilities, extremely hazardous substance facilities, and it should also reflect those agencies and communities that have people on the team, executive board members, etc. One of the things that this assessment does is provide an insurance policy. What the communities that do not have agency folks on the team don't understand is that as part of what we talked about, which is aggressive billing of responsible parties, ultimately, if we can't bill a responsible party, the subdivision in which the incident occurred is a responsible party. Rather than do that, because we don't want to get into the business of saying, City of Massillon, we sent, you had some guy who we can't determine who it is, dumped 40 gallons of gas into your sanitary sewer. We came, we diked it up, cost about $6,000, and here's the bill. I don't think my mayor would appreciate that. But nonetheless, I think she would understand if we were to charge a certain amount of money to each subdivision in exchange for not billing responsible parties that way. It's kind of an insurance policy is the way I would look at it, and the way we tried to sell that. Again, there's 2 different schedules there. One is a certain level, and up to the smallest subdivision would pay the small tier 1 price up to the tier 5 price. And then the second page is an increase, and we figured that we would give you guys the option of picking which assessment schedule we would use.
Have you ever proposed this before? The whole assessment thing?
No, we've never done this before. That's why when we said that we would come to you, you know, we wanted to talk about this first. One of the things we will do if we do this is we'd like to have an opportunity for us as fire chiefs to go back to our community, our elected officials, and say, hey, we're going to begin this type of assessment, and the reason we're going to do that is for sustainability purposes. It's not a great deal of money, but at the same time, it would allow us to take care of part of a contingency fund. It would allow us to buy supplies such as booms, dikes, and things that might come about on a particular incident that otherwise we'd have to pay for out of operating expense. May even help us with a capital fund need in terms of a building. What we'd like to do is work with you guys and perhaps Mr. Luther and Mr. Nichols to refine this if you think it's an option for us, and then put it out. But this was our effort at trying to get some sort of assessment from each of the communities.
What's your history of reimbursement from the federal government? Do we have like a document that kind of shows that?
We've never done it before. But we pledged to you that we would.
Gentlemen, do you have a history of receiving federal grants so that we would have?
Which? For state.
State or federal?
State.
State.
Oh, the truck itself, there's a lot of equipment we've received, yeah. I can easily say over the last...
Drying up now or not?
Yes, but over the last 10 years, it's probably been, for the hazmat team, over the 13 years I've been here, it's got to be approaching $750,000 to $1 million that we've received. That's where most of their large equipments come from, is grants.
But you're saying that is starting to dry up though?
It had, last 2 years we received nothing.
What do you think? Can you put that together for us, by the way? I think in justification, perhaps of going to the political subdivisions and asking for contributions, I think we would want to demonstrate that a primary source in the past, which,
Yeah.
which developed this
And
business
that goes
was
right
not
along with
right
the
up. So I think we need to
building.
see those numbers.
Yeah, paying for the lease, that's the grant that paid for the lease on the building.
Okay.
And that, it's gone as of this month, April.
Okay.
What Tom's trying to say is, and this has went on for years, we have a few departments, the three sitting here today, along with our manpower, our firefighters, Chief Guerra, our control officers, that put the majority of the time and the township's money and the city's money into the hazmat team. But everybody in Stark County enjoys that hazmat team.
Yeah.
If they get, and it's not all small communities. We have some cities that they have no members on the team, no members serve on the executive board, but that hazmat team can roll into that city at any time, and they've not give a dime or any hours into helping us out. So we're trying to even out the playing field and keep the hazmat team on the road and finance with a nice budget that they can continue.
So what I guess what we're asking you as part of Part 4 is to maybe work with us and try to, if you agree that we should be asking the political subdivisions for contributions, maybe we could refine this and put it out at some point in the future. This is not the final draft or the final document, but we feel like it's a work in progress right now. We just need a little bit of help for that.
I guess from my perspective, and again, we talk individually here, we're not talking this as a work, but from my perspective, I mean, I think it's a good idea we've done a lot of work already, it's a good idea to work with Chris and Grant on this thing, to try to formulate this a little bit further, let's kick it around a little bit further. I don't think we're making a commitment that we're going to ask other political subdivisions to do so, but I think we need to investigate it in order to be responsible in the manner in which we're funding this entity. But again, I think it's important that we do look at the history of federal and state funding, demonstrating, where it's been and where it's going, future needs, future capital needs. We know that, I know on the next page, the building which we discussed capital needs back in August. We know that in the absence of federal and state funding, by the way, those capital needs obviously have to be fulfilled in some way, shape, or form. So I think we need to keep working in this direction and putting together this information. So I think that you're definitely going in the right direction with this whole thing. At least for me, don't have commitment for me that they're ready yet. I think to put out a billing schedule, for example, to critical subdivisions until we have more justification and explanation and take a further look at it.
Yes.
But we get it, yeah.
And what happens if it's a question for later, but what happens if somebody doesn't participate? I mean, I know $50 doesn't sound like a lot of money to Limaville, but to Limaville, that's a lot of money. I just have some minor thoughts on this.
Take a look at that.
I think we could open up their eyes, Commissioner,
Yeah.
if Limaville did have a spill, and they actually saw what the cost was after that first spill, they had to realize. And at that point in time, there could be something in there that, the political subdivision should be billed, because what if the team spends 2 days in Limaville because it's a large spill? Who absorbs that cost? And Limaville just got that hazmat team for nothing. So.
At the same time, Commissioner, the feelings that you have, we had in talking about this at the executive board level, and we kicked around the possibility of not charging entities under a certain level of population. So this is all in play, and ultimately you guys are the deciders. Do we charge or don't we charge? And we'll work together to figure out how much we do, if we do. But we wanted to at least bring it back to you and say, should we continue along this path?
And yes, so the answer to that is yes, we would encourage you to continue along that path and work with them and take another further look at this.
Okay. Before I get to part 5, which is the building, I'm going to talk about part 6 for a second, because I figure I'd change it up.
Tell me what the 6 parts are, by the way, just for my notes. Part 1.
Part 1 of the strategic plan was to ask you for $65,000. We did that. Part 2 was to begin to reduce our expenses. We're working on that. Part 3 was
Persistence of billing responsibility.
yes, responsible parties. Thank you. Part 4 was political subdivision contributions. Part 5 is lease space in building. And Part 6, that I'm going to talk about right now, is federal funding. While the federal funds have dried up in many areas for hazardous materials teams, one thing they have not dried up for is fire departments and the Fire Act grant. In fact, Commissioner Burney understands that we have written a regionalized grant for radios that through the Fire Act grant, so that the Red Center might be able to get on board with the 800 system. There are regionalized grants such as that through FEMA. Unfortunately, what we have not been able to do is write those because, well, we were all working on regionalized needs for something else. The Stark County Hazardous Materials Team is not a fire department and cannot write for these grants individually. But collectively, we can write as regionalized fire departments for a grant for the hazardous materials team. And we would host that through one or more of our fire department agencies. We're looking at that right now. We're starting to plan that. That would be in the fall, and that would be a part 6 that we didn't mention last year because, well, I didn't feel like we were being honest because the groups who were represented had already written a regionalized grant for something else. But we will try and do that in the fall if we're able to do that. So that's another part of our strategic plan that we're working on. To go back to part 5, which is the lease space, we had a federal grant that runs out this month. It was for approximately $20,100 annually, and we believe we've had this for the last 10 years. That's $210,000. Had we purchased a building instead of just gotten lease space, we would have been farther ahead. Now, I don't know that any of us here knows whether we could have done that, whether they would have allowed us to build a building and use that for a building purchase. So we don't have the facts of what that, but the fact of the matter is the grant's done, and we need a place to stay. We gave People's Cartage notice that we will no longer be there effective in June. And I think we sent you notification of that. The City of Canton graciously has allowed us space to store a second vehicle. So we're going to have Hazmat 1 and Hazmat 2 in Canton fire stations right now. Hazmat 3 is going to be out at the sheriff's office. It's going to be outside. We don't think that's going to be a problem with the way the vehicle itself is situated. But again, we're still scattered throughout. And what we really need to do is try to focus on finding a place to stay. When we spoke in August last year, we talked about $35,000 for capital expenses. We believe that if we can impress you enough to put forth that $35,000 and we combined it with our $26,000 and the $15,000 annually that we could set aside from out of the operating budget, we may be able to build upon a project similar to the one that you have in front of you, which is $210,000 for a building. If you notice on the second page, part of that $210,000 does talk about utility hookups, things like that. What we tried to do is bring to you a project that would be ready for everything but land. Land is going to be additional. We'd like to partner with you guys again and try to figure out where we can centrally locate this place, where there might be some land available, where we might be able to come up with housing and training our team in a single structure that is pretty much centrally located. Now, I can tell you the City of Massillon is going to get Ohio Fire Chiefs Association, which says they have to build a building. And we actually considered, you know, if we're going to have to build a building, maybe we put on an extra bay, but, you know, we don't have that in front of us right now, and it's still going to scatter our resources into different areas. Maybe we do keep a truck at Canton, maybe we do keep a truck at Massillon. The third truck's going to have to be somewhere else, and we're really starting to move toward the idea that with your help, we need to find a single place where we can train our folks, where we can house our resources, where we can have a response area. And at the end of 10 or 15 years, we actually have a building or something to show for it, rather than at the end of 10 or 12 years, we had $21,000 and we've got nothing to show for it. So now I'll shut up and listen.
What's the cost of the building? It's on the second page, 210.
210.
And that includes, that includes the engineering and all the site work assistance, okay?
Well, those are all estimated.
Yeah, ballpark,
Bingo.
yeah. So you're saying you need 210 to build the building plus the site?
Correct.
What sites have you looked at? Have you looked at sites?
No.
No.
What we'd really like to do, what we hope is that you have some land available for
That sheriff's office would be a perfect location. I know Chief Garrett looked at it, and I'm not familiar with the garage to the back of the property that's fallen in, but it's on a floodplain. And the other thing we're offering to you is maybe you already have a building that has 2 or 3 bays that we're not aware of. I don't know all the buildings that the county
We've
owns.
got a really nice building behind the dog warden's office. Really nice building.
That's the one that you're on.
No. I know we did talk about, I mean, I think we touched upon the sheriff's, location. I think I'd have to see a map of that. We'd have to put that one out a bit further. Discuss it with the sheriff.
What's nice about the sheriff's location is, and I don't know if you're aware, the office for Hazmat was graciously hosted by Chief Garrett downtown on the second floor in the fire chief's office. And Tim has worked out since the 911 call takers were removed that the Hazmat team is downstairs with the EMA and at the EOC, and that's where they should be. It's a county team, it's a county resource. So they're all together, and it'd be really nice to get our equipment out there also.
Just a quick note for you also, we're also hosting the fire investigation team, countywide fire investigation team that the fire chiefs oversee. We've also provided space in that room for them too. So they're-
One of the things that I didn't talk about that makes it so nice is that now, because EMA does the billing, those two offices are right next to each other, so there's no gap in, well, we have to have the report's here, everything. We've tried to make things much more efficient that way. I guess at this point, what we're looking for is some idea of how we continue to move this project forward.
Where's the show our property management plan?
I'll have to find that, but it runs down.
So this is
Actually,
Yeah, this is in the east side.
Yeah, this is,
That's a-
yeah, that's east, yeah, that's east.
I got a question on the assessment. How would that
Yes.
logistically flow? I mean, if we say, okay, fine, we think that's fair, who would collect it? I mean, would it be just voluntary? That they say, okay, this is what we think you should pay? But if
The
you
way
don't-
I envision that working, Commissioner, would be that those of us who have elected officials in those subdivisions, we would go back to them and say, informally, hey, you've gotten a great deal since 1987 for your hazardous materials team, but we don't have a sustainable team. And we're working with the commissioners to build a sustainable team for as long as we can. This will help us be able to do that. Some of us would go to those smaller communities that didn't have fire departments, for example, and also talk to them. We'd be happy to network with them. Ultimately, though, if you decided that you weren't going to participate, well, to get to your question, who would collect that?
Right.
I guess I would, and then I'd hand that stuff to Tim so that he could put journal entry or put that into the county fund. But I would take it upon myself to check off who is collectible, who is not collectible, who paid, who didn't, and then we would update that at the executive board meetings. In the event that there was an incident at a place that was not, that did not participate, we would absolutely send them a bill as a responsible party. Now, in the event that they did not pay the bill, then what we would do is come back to you guys and punt and say, what do you want us to do? I'm just being
I don't,
honest.
I have my own opinion.
We just need to keep looking at it, I think, at this point. You want to express your opinion, you want to
Yeah.
hold off till we have it, just because it's a different concept?
Well, you probably won't like my
Go
opinion.
ahead.
I'm just, to be blunt, I don't think we should be charging back anybody. I think the county should take responsibility for this because it is something that we are doing for the whole. We are Stark County. I do not think we should be charging back. I think we should be subsidizing.
Well, it's a small amount of money, clearly.
Yeah, I think it's something that we say to the citizens, this is what the county is doing for you. They have placed faith in us in passing sales tax. I understand it's criminal justice, but at the end of the day, I just am opposed to nickel and diming. I think we, as commissioners, need to assume that responsibility.
Very, very still.
By the way, here's the property, it's actually to the west that they own, and that is the Humane Society over here. So, over here. So this is the sheriff's parcel, and this is also one of the,
Parking lot on the side of the branch.
Yeah.
Is the EMA's parking lot. And we've had a discussion with the sheriff probably 10 years ago. They wouldn't allow us to build a building, but since we were allowed to pay for a lease, we briefly talked about having the sheriff's office build a building for us, and we lease it from them, and the state nixed that idea. I've actually discussed with the federal auditors when they were in this whole issue of not being able to pay for a building, and I felt the lease was a waste of money, and they didn't want to discuss it. The one time we've had federal auditors in, I've even brought this issue up that I didn't feel it was a waste of money. As much as we're spending over time. you know, so.
Commissioner Creighton, to respond to what you had to say, there were some of us on the executive board committee that felt exactly the way you do. But as part of the strategic plan that we presented you last August, we felt like we had to advance something for your consideration.
And I know you probably told me this, and I'm sorry. What did we pay people's cartilage? I just want to go back to that.
$2,100. $21,000, I'm
a
sorry.
year. So we're going to save that.
That was in the form of
Because-
a grant.
Oh, it was in the form of a grant.
Yeah, it's arguably, we're not saying it, we're getting reimbursed for
Okay,
it.
all right.
So I mean, we can't pay for it.
See, these are one of these things that are what I believe is public value. It is for the public good. It is not, we're not trying to nickel and dime Little Limaville or the rich township of Jackson. We're all in this together, and we don't know when hazmat's going to be needed. But we are prepared as a county. It is forward thinking instead of saying, you owe me $50, you owe me $750.
Right now, understand, if we go to Limaville, let's say I have a control officer and
Yeah.
Chief Rich has two, Jackson Township pays that control officer time and a half to go to Limaville for 2 days, and that's what we're trying to balance. And I agree, it'd be great if we could subsidize that with the county. We're just,
My question is, how much are the political subdivisions actually spending? Do we have those numbers?
City of Massillon spent about $18,000 on hazardous materials last year.
mine was about 11,000.
Paying the
Canton's
team
was-
members?
Kansas was exorbitant, paying the team members.
30, 35, you get reimbursed for 12. So
But everybody enjoys the
yes, you
benefit.
get
That's,
12 that back, so you're spending 24,000.
we just want to try to make that up a little bit.
Tim?
I'm firm on Chief's numbers. Because we reimbursed for part of Tom Garrett's time, and it is only part, the City of Canton had about 36,000 in total expenditures, and we're only reimbursing 12,000 of that. So I mean, that gives you some idea.
You're saying the Canton is out of pocket for hazmat, 24,000?
Yeah.
And you said,
Yeah,
Chief, what'd you say?
roughly.
Your-
My line item's 11. I don't have the figures today of what it was in
Okay,
13,
yeah,
but I put 11 in that.
Jackson's 11?
11.
So you know, everybody
Madison is
that's,
what?
Right around 18.
so you know that everybody puts a person on the team, a control officer, they agree to pay for the first 36 hours, manpower hours, 36 hours for that person, and if it's just a team member, they pay for 20 hours out of their, out of their own fund. They're responsible for that. There's no reimbursements. Then after the control officers pass the 36 hours, that's when the county reimburses them, is for above and beyond 36 hours in a year.
No.
And I will tell you that a lot of places have not billed us in the past for those hours. We have, when we put the team manager on, we were expecting a lot more time with Canton. We've reimbursed for the team manager, but most of the control officers, Plain Township, Massillon, Jackson, they traditionally have not charged us for those extra hours.
That's because we couldn't afford it if we did, so.
We have 37 team members right now.
How much does Canton Township have? Chris, yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head.
So we know we have a lot of work to do yet, but we wanted to at least update you on where we are and begin to talk about a place to stay and how we can continue to fund the team for sustainability purposes.
What are you going to do with CAD?
I'm sorry?
What are you going to do with CAD? Are you going to give that
I might.
to everybody?
I might,
Okay.
yeah, because it's for a good cause.
Okay. It's like
I'm a Richard
$500,000.
Regula today. I'm going to give away. I don't know, something's just come over me. Well, sometimes you do
That's a
things for the public
$500,000
good.
maintenance
Yeah,
charge.
I get it, Dan. I get it. I just, but you got to give back to the community.
I
mean,
understand, Richard. I'm sorry, Janet.
Obviously, Commissioners, we could add a Part 7 of the plan if you are in that much of a giving mood.
You must have caught me. I didn't spend any money this weekend, and I am a spendaholic, so, I just.
Took my wife to Columbus, so I spent money.
Well, I think, let's take a further look at that, at least from my perspective, because I think that the part of this that we have to take a look at, again, not only with regard to this issue of hazmat, but I think we have to look at the contributions that are being made by the entities that participate versus those who don't participate. I think we also have to think about a consistent philosophy, along these lines with a lot of other issues. And I, of course, I understand your perspective on this. I think that we have to have a consistent, approach to what we as county government, decide to fund and what we decide not to fund and so forth, and whether we can spread some of that around and so forth in order just for everybody to have a buy-in. And that was kind of like the concept that we've had in all the CAD discussions that we've had. And that is that there needs to be a consistent buy-in into this thing by everybody. So I think that we need to take a look at that. I think we need to take a look at the availability of land at the Sheriff's Department, if that's a feasible direction for us to go. And to that extent, Chris and Brandt, why don't you get together with the sheriff and with these guys and walk around out there, I guess, and take a look at that. And you have to I guess you have to develop for us the kind of footprint that you would need by way of size and how it would plug in and the most economical place to put it out there if there is such a place. And let's take a look at that also. I mean, we're fully supportive, obviously, as you know from the August meeting, of what you do. It's a very, very important safety function that you perform.
Well, once again, we really appreciate your time and your support.
We also are trying to build on this, and we have built on this. County fire chiefs, we are now currently training a technical rescue team. Plain, Jackson, Canton, Massillon, they've all been training together. Water rescue, rope rescue, that'll further collaboration between the departments. The county fire chiefs have an IMAT team. If we have a large incident, multiple fire chiefs would respond and assist the fire chief whose jurisdiction the incident was in, and Tom was the first one to experience that with a chemical spill at Affinity. Multiple fire chiefs were on the scene to help him. And we've also developed a purchasing consortium for EMS supplies. We're right now about 9 departments in the county. We're all sharing the same vendor and getting what they call metro pricing all together on our EMS supplies. And if I run out of a certain IV needle, I can just call Tom and he can loan me a box of 20. We're all using the same supplies until mine come in, and I just give him the box back. So the county fire chiefs are working forward. There's about 4 or 5 other teams going on to build on the hazmat team, which for one I'm very proud of that this county has. They're a type 2 team. There's no other ones around. So it's a great benefit. We want to continue that.
Fire departments are the poster child of collaboration. Thank you.
Hey, quick question, are you under any time constraints with moving 1 and 2 into Kansas City and 3 over at the sheriff's office, or is that, do we have? Right, that's when you have to be out.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
But that's our internal plan.
Yeah, I've got 4 pallets. I have 4 pallets down there that came out of Affinity Medical Center. There were some Homeland Security purchases that, when Doctor's Hospital went away, had to come back. I'm trying to find a home for those. May have to be the county, one of the county buildings down there at the behind the old dog warden's office. I'm hoping maybe Kansas City Health was considering taking them. It's
Got a junk barn down there, just bring it down.
it's a prepackaged hospital unit. I'm trying to find a home for it. If somebody doesn't want to take it, if another one of the hospitals or something does not want to actually take control of it, or one of the health departments, then I would bring back to the commissioners that we offer it out to other communities. It's sort of a prepackaged pod hospital. It's a 1 ward. Like if you had to turn a gym into a place to take care of some type of epidemic patients or something like that. There's cots and little side tables and just basic supplies, but there's 4 pallets of stuff that makes up a, I think, 50-bed unit. But if I can't find somebody else to take another one of those, because the hospitals have already gotten a ton of stuff, and they're complaining about, they're bulging it with their storage. If I can't find somebody to take that, I'll bring it back to you and we'll offer it to one of the other surrounding counties.
Why wouldn't we do it to the Red Cross?
Actually, it's not something we would actually use. Most of the products they would not use because it is healthcare oriented. It is truly health. It is public health care oriented. But if we, I'll update you. It looks like Kansas City Health they thought they might have space for it. Yeah.
And Mr. Treasurer, if you could, then on your one page, by the way, which you have participating agencies and so forth, and you just started talking about how much is unreimbursed each of them. Could you complete that list for us so we understand how much the participating agencies are spending out of pocket versus everybody that's not a participating agency who are spending nothing on it?
Sure.
I think it's important to the approach. I think that's basically the approach that you've taken with regard to this. Okay.
Thank you for
I
your
think
time.
their concern was that we don't want to drive participating agencies into the category of non-participating agencies by virtue of getting it for free.
Right.
Some would like to participate, they just don't have
They don't have the money.
the manpower, the people that are trained or guys that are interested in being on hazmat. But those agencies might be putting people on the technical rescue team. They might have people that help with the purchasing consortium, so there are other ways they can. But we have some that aren't doing anything, and those are the ones that are so frustrating.
The city of Massillon did not have any participating members until 2008, when we wrote a FEMA grant for training for hazardous materials technicians. So we took 9 employees and we sent them all the way through. Now through retirements or resignations or whatever, we only have 5 members on the team, plus me. I went through the training, but really I'm not a technician member of the team. That was how we were able to do it. So each agency really has to come up with a means to be able to find a way to participate. But we think we've done pretty successfully. And the city of Canton, by and large, makes up the lion's share of that response.
Okay, so we'll put those numbers together, keep looking at those, and we'll look at the sheriff's later.
Thank you.
Thank you for your